When my father's attorney told me I'd inherited $33 million with the condition that I could never see my mother again, I collapsed right there in his office. 3 days later, I was digging through my father's private files at 2 a.m., shaking as I discovered documents that shattered everything I thought I knew about our family. That's when I realized that inheritance wasn't a gift. It was a prison with gold-plated bars. If you're seeing this, hit subscribe and tell me where you're from in the comments. Because trust me, this story twists more than a roller coaster built by a madman. I used to think I knew what wealth meant. Growing up as Julian Montgomery's only daughter, I had everything money could buy: designer clothes, private education, summer homes in 3 countries. What I didn't have was a normal relationship with my father. He was always Mr. Montgomery to everyone, even me sometimes. Cold, calculating, demanding perfection. My mother, Elizabeth, was the warm one, my shelter from Dad's impossible standards. She'd whisper, "Your father loves you in his way, Claire," whenever I'd cry after one of his cutting remarks about my mediocre performance at school or piano recitals. I was never good enough for him. Graduating with honors from Princeton? He asked why it wasn't Harvard. Landing a job at a prestigious marketing firm? He wondered why I wasn't starting my own company. That was Julian Montgomery. Nothing was ever enough. The morning of my 28th birthday began like any other Tuesday. I was rushing to catch the subway to work when my phone rang. Claire Montgomery. The voice was formal, unfamiliar. Speaking. This is Harold Winters from Winters and Associates Law Firm. I'm your father's attorney. I'm afraid I have some difficult news. My stomach dropped. What happened? Your father passed away last night. Heart attack. I'm terribly sorry. Deu de tilted se device. Despite our complicated relationship, despite everything, he was my father. I sank onto a nearby bench, commuters streaming past me like I was a rock in a river. There are urgent matters regarding your father's estate that require immediate attention, Harold continued. Could you come to my office this afternoon? I don't remember agreeing. I don't remember calling my boss or hailing a cab. I just remember standing in front of the gleaming skyscraper where my father had built his empire, wondering why I didn't feel more grief. Script part separator ===. Harold Winters' office was exactly what you'd expect from the attorney of a billionaire, all polished mahogany and leather chairs that probably cost more than my monthly rent. He was a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses who'd been my father's legal shadow for over 30 years. Please, sit down, Mestre Montgomery. His voice was gentler in person. Again, my condolences. I nodded mechanically. Thank you. You mentioned urgent matters? Yes. He adjusted his glasses. Your father's will is quite specific. The reading is scheduled for tomorrow, but he left instructions that I should inform you privately of certain provisions beforehand. My throat tightened. What provisions? Harold slid a document across his desk. You are the primary beneficiary of your father's estate. The total value is approximately $33 million. The number hit me like a physical blow. I knew my father was wealthy, but I'd never expected this. 33 million. Period. That includes liquid assets, property holdings, and his controlling interest in Montgomery Industries. I felt dizzy. This was life-changing money. No more budget spreadsheets. No more counting days until payday. I don't understand. Dad always said I needed to earn my own way. Harold's expression shifted slightly. Your father was complex. However, there are conditions attached to your inheritance. Conditions? What kind of conditions? He cleared his throat. The funds will be released to you only if you agree to terminate all contact with your mother, Elizabeth Montgomery. I laughed. It was so absurd I thought it must be a joke. You can't be serious. I'm afraid I am. The terms are explicit. No contact whatsoever, not in person, by phone, email, or through third parties. Any violation results in immediate forfeiture of the entire inheritance. That's insane. I stood up so quickly my chair nearly toppled. Why would he do this? Harold's face remained impassive. Your father didn't share his reasoning with me. E quem te cut my madeira out of my life for money? That's monstrous. You have 30 days to decide, he said, sliding another document toward me. This waiver would need to be signed, acknowledging your acceptance of the terms. I left the office in a daze, the papers clutched in my hand. Outside, rain had started falling, matching my mood. My phone buzzed, Mom calling. I stared at her name on the screen, tears blurring my vision. What kind of man tries to control his daughter from beyond the grave? What had happened between my parents that I didn't know about? Script part separator ===. I answered my mother's call with a trembling voice. Claire, what happened at the meeting? She sounded worried. I couldn't tell her. Not yet. Not about this cruel choice my father had forced on me. Can I come over, Mom? I need to see you. An hour later, I was sitting in her modest apartment. After the divorce 5 years ago, she'd moved into this small 2-bedroom in Queens. No alimony, she'd insisted. Just a clean break. I never understood why she walked away with almost nothing after 28 years of marriage. Tea? She asked, her hands already busy with the kettle. I watched her, still elegant at 62, her silver-streaked hair pulled back, wearing the simple pearl earrings that were her signature. How could I ever cut this woman out of my life? Dad left me everything, he blurted out. $33 million. The teacup she was holding clattered against its saucer. Oh. That's unexpected. There's a condition, I continued, unable to look her in the eye. I can't tell you what it is yet, but it's horrible, Mom. Something's not right. She sat beside me, taking my hands in hers. Whatever it is, we'll figure it out. Money's the worth losing yourself over. If only she knew. That night, I couldn't sleep. At 2 a.m., I made a decision. Dad's penthouse was technically mine now, and I still had the key. If I wanted answers, I needed to search for them myself. The place was eerily silent as I let myself in. Everything was pristine, touche da Museum Tomai Faters perfect life. I headed straight for his home office. 3 hours of searching through files revealed nothing unusual, until I found a hidden panel in his desk drawer. Inside was a thumb drive and a folder labeled Elizabeth, Evidence. My hands shook as I connected the drive to his computer. What opened before me was a nightmare. Surveillance photos of my mother with another man, dating back 15 years. Financial records showing regular payments to a private investigator. And worst of all, DNA test results. My DNA test results. The conclusion was highlighted in yellow, paternity excluded. Julian Montgomery wasn't my biological father. Script part separator I stared at those 3 words, paternity excluded, until they blurred before my eyes. The timestamp on the test was from when I was 16. He'd known for 12 years that I wasn't his biological daughter and never said a word. Everything suddenly made terrible sense. His emotional distance, his impossible standards, the way he'd scrutinize my face sometimes when he thought I wasn't looking. He'd been searching for proof, for resemblance to the man in those surveillance photos. I scrolled frantically through more files. The man with my mother was named Thomas Reeves, a professor of literature at the university where Mom used to work as an administrator before she quit to become the perfect corporate wife. In the photos, they looked happy, in love. Had my entire childhood been a lie? Had I been punished my whole life for something I didn't even know about? The sun was rising when I finally left the penthouse, the thumb drive burning a hole in my pocket. I couldn't confront my mother yet. I needed time to process this betrayal. Back in my apartment, I called in sick to work and did the only thing that made sense. I researched Thomas Reeves. Within hours, I found him, still teaching at the university, author of 3 books on American poetry, divorced with no children. No children he knew about, anyway. Was this man my father? Did he know about me? The next day was the official reading of the will. I arrived at Harold's office feeling like a ghost haunting my own life. Mom was already there, sitting stiffly in a chair, along with several executives from Montgomery Industries. The reading proceeded exactly as Harold had told me privately, with one addition I hadn't expected. Furthermore, Harold read from the document, if Claire Montgomery chooses to forfeit her inheritance by maintaining contact with Elizabeth Montgomery, all assets will be transferred to the Montgomery Foundation with specific instructions that Elizabeth Montgomery shall never benefit from any charitable works performed by said foundation. Script part separator equals. My mother's face drained of color. I watched her hands grip the armrests until her knuckles turned white. This is absurd, I said, my voice shaking with rage. Can he legally do this? Harold adjusted his glasses uncomfortably. I advised against these provisions, but yes, Ms. Montgomery, they are legally binding. After the reading, I caught my mother in the hallway. Her eyes were red but dry. Mom, we need to talk, I whispered. Not here, she said, glancing around nervously. Come tomai apartamento tomorrow. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that thumb drive, about Thomas Reeves, about the fact that the man I'd spent my life trying to please wasn't even my biological father. When I arrived at Mom's apartment the next day, I was shocked to find she wasn't alone. A silver-haired man with kind eyes and a weathered face sat on her couch. Claire, my mother said, her voice trembling, this is Thomas. E frozen dedo urve, starem et de men from de surveillance fotos. De men rumait be my real father. I think it's time you knew the truth, Mom said. For the next 2 hours, they told me everything. How they'd fallen in love when they were young, how my mother had gotten pregnant, how Julian Montgomery, already a rising star in the business world, had pursued my mother relentlessly despite knowing she was in a relationship. When I found out I was pregnant, Mom explained, tears streaming down her face, Julian offered security, stability. Thomas was still finishing his PhD, struggling financially. I wanted to be with you both, Thomas said quietly. But Julian threatened to ruin my career before it began. He had powerful connections. I made the wrong choice, Mom whispered. E chose security over love. And Julian knew, almost from the beginning. He saw how you didn't look like him, how you loved books and poetry instead of business. He had me followed, she continued. 4 years. When you were 16, he secretly took a DNA sample from you, a strand of hair, I think, and confirmed what he'd always suspected. Why didn't you ever tell me? I asked, my voice breaking. Julian threatened to disinherit you completely if I ever told you the truth. He said he'd make sure you had nothing. Script part separator equals. Thomas leaned forward, hands clasped. I wanted to find you so many times. I watched you from afar at your high school graduation, your college ceremony. I even attended one of your marketing presentations last year. You were there? The thought that this stranger had been watching me while I remained oblivious sent chills down my spine. I was so proud, he said, voice cracking. You have my mother's eyes. I stood up abruptly. This is too much. I need time. My mother reached for me. Claire, please. The inheritance. The inheritance. I laughed bitterly. You think I care about his money now? He used it to control you for decades, and now he's trying to control me from the grave. You don't understand, Mom said urgently. Julian has powerful friends. If you reject the inheritance, they'll make sure you never work in the city again. What are you talking about? She exchanged glances with Thomas. Your father, Julian, was involved in some questionable business practices. People who would prefer certain things stay buried. Like what? I don't know details. He was careful. But there were meetings with people whose names would appear in newspapers months later, indicted for fraud, money laundering. I remembered the corporate executives at the will reading. Their tight smiles. The way they watched me. Thomas spoke quietly. Claire, there's something else you should know. 2 days ago, someone broke into my office at the university. They took nothing but went through all my files. You think it was connected to my father's death? He nodded grimly. The timing is suspicious. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about those executives, about Harold's uncomfortable expression during the reading. What if the inheritance wasn't just about punishing my mother? What if there was something else? The next morning, I made 2 decisions. First, I called an old college friend who now worked as a private investigator. Second, I scheduled a meeting with Harold Winters, alone. Script part separator equals. Harold's office felt colder the second time around. He barely looked at me as I took a seat. Ms. Montgomery, have you reached a decision about the inheritance? I need more information, I said, watching his face carefully. Did my father tell you why he hated my mother so much? Harold shifted uncomfortably. Client confidentiality. He's dead, Harold. And we both know something's not right here. He sighed, removing his glasses to polish them. Your father was complex, obsessive about loyalty and control, I added. That too. He hesitated. Claire, I've known you since you were a child. If I were you, I'd sign the waiver. You want me to abandon my mother for money? You want you to protect yourself? His voice dropped. Your father's business associates expect continuity. What does that mean? It means Montgomery Industries has certain arrangements that require careful handling. Achille Hanfrumi. Illegal arrangements. Harold's silence was answer enough. I need copies of all my father's business records, I said. That's impossible. The board would never. E controle international, don't you? Whether I've signed the waiver or not. He nodded reluctantly. Then get me those records. Today. As I left his office, my phone buzzed with a text from my PI friend Mac. Found something. Meet me at Riverside Park, 2 da tarde. Don't tell anyone. I felt eyes on me as I exited the building. A black sedan idled across the street, windows tinted. When I turned to look, it pulled away. Someone was watching me. The question was, who? Script part separator ===. At Riverside Park, Mac was already waiting, his lanky frame hunched on a bench. His eyes darted around constantly, checking for followers. Thanks for coming, he said quietly as I sat beside him. E finque ora in Sirius Trobo, Claire. What did you find? He pulled out his tablet. Your father's company has been moving millions through shell corporations in the Cayman Islands. Classic money laundering setup. I felt sick. For who? Some very dangerous people. He swiped through documents. These transfers coincide with major construction projects in the city. Politicians getting kickbacks, building inspectors looking the other way. My God! Everything I thought I knew about my father crumbled further. So the inheritance condition isn't just about your mother. They need someone they can control. If you reject the money and walk away, you're losing who knows too much. My hands trembled. What about the executives at the will reading? Martin Greer and Philip Denvers? Max Expression Darkened. They've been with your father from the beginning. They're in deep. And Harold Winters? Hard to say. He's crafted every contract, but kept himself technically clean. I told him about my request for business records. Mac grabbed my arm. Claire, they won't just hand those over. You've basically announced you're digging. What should you do? You need leverage. Something they want more than they want you silenced. That night, 3 things happened in rapid succession. First, my apartment was broken into, nothing taken, but everything searched. Second, Harold called to say the records would be ready tomorrow. And third, I received an anonymous email with a single attachment, a photo of my mother's building with a red X drawn across it. The message was clear. Play along, or people get hurt. Script part separator ===. I forwarded the threatening email to Mac immediately, then called my mother. Mom, I need you to go stay with Thomas tonight. Don't tell anyone where you're going. Claire, what is happening? Her voice trembled. Just please do it. I'll explain everything tomorrow. After ensuring she was safely away, I turned my attention to the real problem. I needed those business records, but walking into Harold's office might be walking into a trap. I needed backup. I called Sarah Jenkins, my former college roommate who now worked as a corporate attorney specializing in fraud cases. This is insane, Sarah said after I explained everything. You realize we're talking about some of the most powerful men in the city? Will you help me? She sighed. Meet me at my office at 7 a.m. We'll go to Winters together. That night, I barely slept. Instead, I prepared. I wrote down everything I knew about my father's business dealings. I backed up the thumb drive to 3 separate locations. And I made a recording detailing everything I discovered, to be released if anything happened to me. At 6:30 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. Mestre Montgomery. The voice was unfamiliar, male. The board has called an emergency meeting at 9 a.m. today. Your presence is required. Who is this? Your father's security team. We've been instructed to escort you. My bolsiki Kenneth. That won't be necessary. I'll be there. We insist. I hung up and immediately called Sarah. Change of plans. They're trying to bring me in. Stall them, she said urgently. I've been reviewing some of what you sent. Claire, this goes beyond money laundering. There are connections to political figures, judges. What should you do? Meet me at the coffee shop across from Montgomery Industries in 1 hour. I'm bringing reinforcements. I grabbed my emergency bag, packed with copies of everything I'd found, and headed out the fire escape just as a black SUV pulled up in front of my building. Script part separator, The coffee shop was crowded with morning commuters when I slipped in through the back entrance. Sarah was already there, along with a stern-looking woman I didn't recognize. Claire, this is Special Agent Rebecca Torres, FBI, Sarah said quietly. My stomach dropped. FBI. Sarah, I didn't agree to. Your friend made the right call, Agent Torres interrupted. What you've described involves interstate wire fraud, racketeering, and potential bribery of government officials. I just want to be left alone, I said, my voice breaking. I don't want my mother hurt. The best protection is exposure, Torres said firmly. We've been building a case against several of your father's associates for months. Your evidence could be the missing piece. My phone buzzed with texts from unknown numbers. Where are you? The board is waiting. Final warning. They're getting desperate, Sarah observed. Agent Torres slid a small device across the table. Wear this. It's a recording device. Go to your meeting. Get them talking about the offshore accounts. We'll have agents nearby. And if something goes wrong, it won't, Sarah squeezed my hand. But if it does, we have enough to move now. We just need more to make it stick. As I approached the Montgomery Industries tower, Martin Greer was waiting in the lobby. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Claire, we were concerned when you didn't arrive with the security team. I prefer to make my own way, Martin. In the elevator, he stood too close. Your father built something extraordinary here. It would be a shame to see it dismantled. Because of what's hidden in the structure? I asked, heart pounding. His smile tightened. You're very much like Julian. Always seeing angles. The boardroom fell silent as I entered. 8 men in expensive suits, Harold among them, all watching me like vultures. Philip Denver Sotod. Claire, we have concerns about your commitment to your father's vision. I took a deep breath. Actually, I have some questions about his vision, particularly regarding Cayman Vista Holdings and those deposits to Judge Williams Foundation. The room went deadly quiet. Script part separator, The temperature in the boardroom seemed to drop 20 degrees in an instant. Philip Denvers recovered first, his professional smile sliding back into place like a mask. I'm not sure what you're referring to, he said smoothly. Perhaps we should discuss your misconceptions privately. Isso todo my ground. No more private discussions. No more threats against my mother. I've seen the transfers, the shell companies, the kickbacks. Harold cleared his throat. Claire, these accusations are extremely serious. And documented, I interrupted, feeling the weight of the recording device against my skin. I have copies of everything. Offshore accounts, meetings with Judge Williams before he dismissed the regulatory case last year, the environmental reports that were buried after the Staten Island development. Martin Greer slammed his hand on the table. You stupid girl. Do you have any idea who you're threatening? I'm not threatening anyone. I'm telling you I know everything, and I'm not the only one. I met each of their eyes. My father might have built this company on corruption, but I won't inherit his crimes. Your father built an empire, Philip hissed. He protected everyone in this room, including you. That money in your trust fund? Where do you think it came from? I felt sick but pressed on. Tell me about the Henderson contract. The one where you paid off the building inspector after the foundation failed inspection. Martin lunged toward me, but Harold grabbed his arm. Don't be stupid, he snapped. What happens if you go public? I asked, looking directly at Harold. The attorney's face had gone ashen. Claire, there are people involved who won't hesitate to. Deboardron doors bourse open. Agent Torres entered, flanked by 4 FBI agents. Gentlemen, she announced, you might want to call your lawyers. Script part separator, What followed was chaos. Agents swarmed the boardroom as executives scrambled. Philip tried to delete something on his laptop before an agent seized it. Martin attempted to flee but was blocked at the door. Harold Winters just slumped in his chair, looking oddly relieved. We have a warrant to search these premises and seize all financial records, Agent Torres announced, handing Harold the document. Isso tudo frozen. Watching my father's empire crumble in real time. Years of corruption exposed in minutes. Claire Montgomery. A young agent approached me. We'll need you to come with us for your official statement. Outside the building, reporters had already gathered. Someone had tipped them off. Camera flashes exploded as agents escorted executives out in handcuffs. Was this your plan all along? I asked Sarah as we rode in an FBI vehicle. No. But when you showed me those documents. She shook her head. Claire, some of those contracts implicated judges I've argued cases before. These goals they perdem your father. At FBI headquarters, I spent 6 hours giving my statement, turning over evidence, explaining connections. With each revelation, I felt strange, like I was both destroying and freeing myself from my father's legacy. When I finally emerged, exhausted, my mother was waiting in the lobby. Thomas and I saw the news, she whispered, embracing me. Are you okay? I don't know, I admitted. The inheritance is probably gone. Everything will be frozen during the investigation. She cupped my face. Good. That money was poison. But what will we do now? We'll start over, she said simply. Together. Without his shadow hanging over us. Script part separator, As we left FBI headquarters, reporters swarmed us like hungry wolves. I kept my head down while Agent Torres cleared a path. Mestre Montgomery, did you know about your father's illegal activities? Was this revenge for being disinherited? Are you cooperating with authorities in exchange for immunity? The questions hammered at me until we reached the waiting car. Once inside, I finally broke down, sobbing against my mother's shoulder. It's over, she whispered, stroking my hair. You're free now. But it wasn't over. Not yet. 3 days later, Harold Winters requested to meet me at a small cafe far from downtown. He looked like he'd aged a decade, his suit rumpled, eyes bloodshot. I've been granted limited immunity for my testimony, he explained, hands trembling around his coffee cup. There's something else you should know. He slid a sealed envelope across the table. Inside was a handwritten letter from my father, dated just 2 weeks before his death. Claire, it began. If you're reading this, then you've discovered the truth about everything. I knew you would. You always were smarter than I gave you credit for. I stopped reading, looking up at Harold in disbelief. He knew I would find out. Was this all some kind of test? Harold shook his head. Julian was diagnosed with terminal cancer 6 months ago. He knew he was dying. I think he wanted to see if you would choose truth over money. I returned to the letter, hands shaking. The condition in my will was never meant to be fulfilled. It was a final lesson, that some things matter more than wealth. There's another account, untouchable by my associates, containing $10 million. Harold has the details. It's yours, no conditions. Use it wisely. I stared at the letter, then at Harold. This makes no sense. He tortured me my whole life, then left me money as some kind of moral test? Harold sighed. Julian wasn't capable of showing love normally. This was his version of caring. In the following weeks, as the FBI investigation expanded, I learned more about my father than I had in 28 years of being his daughter. His empire had been built on corruption, but he'd been preparing to bring it all down himself before cancer took him. The evidence I found wasn't hidden from me, it was left for me to find. The trial was a media sensation. Montgomery heiress exposes father's criminal empire dominated headlines for months. Martin Greer and Philip Denvers received lengthy prison sentences. 3 judges were disbarred. Politicians resigned in disgrace. The $10 million remained untouched for almost a year while I figured out what to do with it. Eventually, I established a foundation to help victims of corporate fraud, people who'd lost homes to my father's corrupt building projects, employees who'd been silenced with NDAs. Thomas and I built a careful relationship. He wasn't my dad, that role couldn't be filled overnight, but we found common ground in books, in quiet conversations about poetry and purpose. Yesterday, on what would have been my father's birthday, I visited his grave for the first time. The headstone was simple, Julian Montgomery, with dates but no epitaph. I placed a single rose on the marble slab. I didn't do it for you, I whispered to the silence. But I understand you better now. As I walked away, I felt lighter somehow. The inheritance that had nearly destroyed me had ultimately set me free, not because of the money, but because it forced me to confront the truth, no matter how painful. Some legacies are meant to be rejected. Others, transformed. In the end, I chose to build something new from the ashes of what my father left behind.